this is going to be long. Please go into hibernation. Wow. I said, go into hibernation, meaning just like animals that conserve their energy,
yes,
conserve your cash,
yes,
stop buying things
yes,
that you don't need right
that
now.
You don't need.
Keep cash, and if you have a business plan, put it on hold. I remember I did a tweet. COVID was able to reset the reflex and not have difficulty in breathing, but the oxygen was very low. Because the difficulty in breathing is a response to low oxygen.
Yes.
So your brain tells you there's low oxygen, please breathe faster. So there's a message transmission. COVID would reset that, and the message would be sent. So you're breathing normally, but your oxygen is going down. That's when I did a short video to tell people to buy a pulse oximeter.
Hello, we continue the conversations with Dr. Githinji Gitahi, the CEO of AMREF Africa. So we have talked about many things, very interesting conversations. We have had our laughter moments. Please continue watching. Welcome. Now, Daktari, a lot of us saw you and heard you during the very tough COVID-19 season. So can you tell us about COVID and what you did and why you did it?
COVID-19 was one of those moments that you experience once in a lifetime.
Yes.
And when it came, we talked a lot, even when we met in global meetings and local, talked about the possibility of a pandemic. But no one thought it was going to be a reality.
Oh, what form
if ever it happens, what would you do? You're talking about this and that.
Yes.
And even when it came, no one knew it was going to be a pandemic. I remember when I came back and the country was locked. I'd come from a meeting in the UK where we had the best minds in healthcare, and we did not discuss any possibility of a pandemic. And it was going on in China. It had just started.
Yes.
So nobody actually thought it would happen in reality. We thought the world was too safe and would never go back to the pandemic flu that happened many years ago. But it was with us. So when it came, I think the most important thing was the very early lessons that I learned when I was observing is that people thought that this was a short-term thing.
Yes.
But I could tell this was going to be a long haul.
Long.
Yeah. I had people, for example, when the government said we are going to give curfew for 2 weeks. Some people thought, in 2 weeks it will be gone.
And we forget about it.
Exactly. So you had people making plans for 2 weeks. I'm like, no, the government is not managing your expectations. This is actually going to be long haul. So very early on, I remember releasing a tweet and saying, this is going to be long. Please go into hibernation. I said, go into hibernation, meaning just like animals that conserve their energy,
yes,
conserve your cash,
yes,
stop buying things that you don't need right now.
That you don't need.
Keep cash, and if you have a business plan, put it on hold. I remember I did a tweet very early on because I could tell, based on the cycle of pandemics, this was going to be long term. Yes. Because ideally, when you have a new virus, the new virus is not coming to kill you. It's actually just propagating itself. Yes. It's not coming here to, it's just the way we go and build and cut forests because we want to expand. Yes. So the virus is also looking for a new place to expand. Yes. Yeah. So it's coming to you to propagate. Now, it then has to go probably through the entire cycle of the population for it to, because it's being, it can't stop at half the population. Yes. So all the conversations we're having about lockdowns and this and that were not to end the cycle of the virus. Yes. It was to reduce the rate of infection. Yes. So that, and that's what we're calling flattening the curve. So that when you reduce the rate of infection, you reduce the number of people needing hospital at any one time. The crisis. The crisis. So that you can actually treat them to go back. Yes. But nobody was going to avoid being infected. So we knew that. And therefore, that's why I kept saying, this is just flattening the curve. It's just making sure you don't have a surge of people needing oxygen above the available oxygen. Yes. So you have to keep pushing back. Then when you see the rising, you lock down. But it was going to infect everyone. So I think that was the first lesson. It was going to be long term. Amazing. The next thing was to ensure that people were not living under fear, that they were living under information, so they could make informed decisions. This will not go in next week, so plan well. The reason you're being told to wear a mask is because 1, 2, 3. Public awareness. The reason you're being told to socially distance is not just a policy. social distance. Once you understand why,
It's for your
then you
benefit.
make a decision as to
Yeah.
why. So what happened is that very early on, I started to provide this information. And then the media started to call me to expound
On that.
information.
Yes.
And that's why I became so visible on the media. It wasn't a paid job. It wasn't something I had been asked by somebody to do. It wasn't the government that asked me to talk about it. It was just the people were asking for more. And the media kept calling me to comment, both nationally and internationally.
And globally.
Globally, to also provide just this information.
Okay.
Then now, because of that, I got involved in advisories for the Ministry of Health and this and that, and also started talking to different groups. People started calling, should we close the office? What do you think we should do?
So even businesses.
Oh yes, I talked to banks. I had
Wow.
an agreement with the Kenya Banking Association to talk to banks to give them, it's insurance company.
What's the
I had
outlook
so
on
many.
this thing?
What's the outlook? What should we do? And I had even, I made so many PowerPoints to just present.
Yes.
Was I ever paid for any of that? No. In fact, the one time somebody attempted to pay me now to kind of build a narrative, and they told me, oh, can you tell us what you'll say tomorrow? I said, I don't need your money because I need to say exactly what needs to be heard, not what you ought to be said. So it was just out of the need. Then out of that now, I started noticing some things that needed to be addressed. One was that because there was very little understanding of the disease process, even for WHO, for us, for doctors, it was a very little understanding.
Yes.
So you just needed to observe a few things, read around, and you're like, you connect the dots.
Yes.
And you're like, this is what is going on. I'll give an example. One Saturday I wake up after the Easter of 2020. So COVID was just like 2 or 3 months
It's
old.
really rising
Rising.
rapidly at that time. Yeah.
That evening, a friend of mine called me, said their father had been admitted. That morning, a friend of mine called me, told me their father had died. The same morning, the one who had been admitted died. And when I listened to those stories, it was clear. Those people were above 70, and the story was similar. They said they were not coughing, they did not have shortness of breath.
No signs at all.
No signs. The only sign was they looked a bit confused. So one of them said the father was looking at the TV and saying, that clock has the wrong time. The other one said...
And it's the TV.
It's the TV.
They're watching.
Yes. The other one said the father walked out and then started looking like they are a bit...
In a daze.
In a daze. Both ended up in ICU. When they ended up in ICU, they both had oxygen levels below 60%.
By the time they get to the hospital.
They get to the hospital, but
Yeah.
they had no difficulty in breathing.
Yes.
So when I looked around, I discovered that actually there was some literature that for elderly people, COVID was able to reset the reflex and not have difficulty in breathing, but the oxygen was very low. Because the difficulty in breathing is a response to low oxygen.
Yes.
So your brain tells you there's low oxygen, please breathe faster. So there's a message transmission. COVID would reset that, and the message would be sent. So you're breathing normally, but your oxygen is
It's
going
low.
down. That's when I did a short video to tell people to buy a pulse oximeter. So that when you have
you
an elder,
actually
you put on
measure-
your finger and you measure your oxygen.
You measure the
So if
oxygen
you're an
at
elderly
home.
person, keep one at home. And if you see any sign of confusion,
Yeah.
measure the oxygen. Even below 90%, take them to hospital.
Yeah.
So I did that video
Before it's a crisis.
before it's a crisis.
Yeah.
And that video started doing
Wow.
round. So it was just a build-up. It wasn't like a plan.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
because of this, now I got more involved in now to save lives, we need vaccines. And the vaccines are not available. So I started talking globally, demanding for vaccines to come. I did a video on vaccine justice. I started looking for 200,000 signatures to demand that the rich nations release vaccines. So the whole campaign was organic. It wasn't something
Yes.
that was strategic.
It was out of need.
It was out of need.
Yeah.
I was trying to assist the people to address the need they had.
Oh.
And that actually worked very well. Now I go to a market in Muranga, and a woman will just say, you are the COVID doctor.
Oh.
Because people really watched, and people are in panic.
Yes.
So they were seeking information.
And they were taking all
And
the
they were
information.
taking it.
Yeah.
And I think what kind of made my conversations different was trust.
Yes.
Because people are like, this is not government. So this person speaking
Yeah.
is just speaking out of good
This
intent.
is very
Because people
objective.
Yes, people have certain suspicion of government because they
Yes.
say, oh, maybe you're looking for money.
Or
But
you
because
are
I was
selling
I
something.
was selling something. But because I was not on paid adverts, I was not government, people believed
They
what I was
trusted
saying. And that for me is a leadership principle
Yeah.
of trust that we can
Yeah.
talk about later.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
wow, but that was so impactful, and I think people will always forever be grateful.
Thank you.
Because of the information, as you say, objective,
Yeah.
try this, do this, look out for this.
Yeah.
I think it helped a lot of people, and it saved a lot of lives also.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think some of the cases also did not get to that level of crisis
Yes.
because people had the information
Absolutely.
at their fingertips.
Yes.
So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Now, you have, you also like giving leadership tips and leadership lessons.
Yeah.
And at some point you said that leadership is about giving up power.
Yes.
And I also want to add this and quote Mandela, Nelson Mandela. He said, a leader is like a shepherd. He stays behind the flock, letting the most nimble go out ahead, whereupon the others follow, not realizing that all along they are being directed from behind.
Yeah.
Now, I think in some of the places, the model of leadership is the leader who always wants to appear as being in front
Yeah.
of everybody else. And I think we've seen it also in the animal kingdom,
Yes.
whereby the leader actually
Yes.
is, I think the wolves actually do
Yes,
that.
yes.
The leader is usually the last one.
Behind, yes.
Everyone else is ahead, and the weak ones are the ones in front, and they're being protected by the stronger ones right behind them. So what do you want to tell us about that
Yeah.
as we shape the leadership principles, especially for the young people?
Yeah.
Yeah.